send or whatever. Okay, so this is recorded. All right, so concept of development from the sociological perspective, lesson 1. Okay, so what is sociology? Well, that you have learned already. You should know by now. Anyway, just to recap a bit on the definitions of sociology. For example, sociology refers to the study of human society. Study of human society in terms of its origins, in terms of its functions, and also problems and issues. So it focuses on the relations among people, among groups of people, among different classes or different organizations, and also among different cultures. Okay, that's one. It is also about the study of social behavior, so social life ataupun social behavior, social change, and the causes or social causes and consequences of human behavior. That's the other aspect of sociology. In other words, sociology tries to explore and analyze issues which are vital to our life, to our communities, to our nation, and perhaps to the rest of the world as well. So as a field of discipline, when I said as field discipline adalah seperti apa yang kita buat lah, kita membuat kajian sosiologi dan sebagainya. That subject of sociology is a discipline. So sociology asks many questions. We ask many questions about how groups, human groups, and ideas interact with each other. And that's what sociologists are doing anyway. Asking questions about human interactions, how people interact with each other. Okay, so for example, let me move this up. One aspect of sociology is the study of social institutions, which, by the way, are the major structures making up or made up of groups or ideas which influence people's lives, and also how they view the world and how or the integration into society and so on. Okay. I'm going over this quickly because I think this is something you should have known earlier. But the other thing is, the other concept is what a famous sociologist by the name of Mills, we'll talk about that later, is how to think like a sociologist. How do you think like a sociologist? Macam mana untuk berfikir sebagai seorang sociologist ataupun ahli sociologist, ataupun scholars lah, So socially thinking ataupun thinking socially is more or less referring to the way when we think, that combines several factors, several factors ataupun dimensions. One is historical. So we think about something in terms of its history, in terms of culture, in terms of the structure, and also some critical perspective. So thinking sociologically is thinking in a way that combines all this, not just looking at one aspect. Contohnya, kalau kita hanya mengkaji tentang history, that is not thinking sociologically. It's just thinking historically, right? So when you talk about thinking sociologically, you are thinking along different, a combination of different perspectives. So this is what we do when we examine certain relationship between the societies and also individuals. Right? So what's the advantage of thinking like sociologists? The advantage is we tend to look at things more holistically, looking at issues from different perspectives and so on. So you should get a bit better picture of the issue or the problems and so on. Okay. Another thing related to thinking like a sociologist is also where you should remain neutral. Ya, neutral. Neutral itu maksudnya tidak not bias. That you remain neutral in looking at everyday society. Okay. By being neutral, then you can be your judgment will not be influenced by your prejudice and whatnot. Yeah. So being a sociologist is also to be neutral in your approach to looking at society, everyday society. That's what you should be doing anyway. When you do your research, your PTA, you should remain neutral, and collect your data. Only when you have your data, only then can you make a judgment, right? Not before you start doing the data collection and so on. Okay, so you can never approach life as if you know all the right answers. There's so many answers to certain things. Yeah, so it is your role as a sociologist to find those answers, not just one, but perhaps different answers to certain problems or issues. The other thing which I find really interesting also is the concept of sociological imagination. Pernah dengar kan? Have you heard of this term before? Pernah? Tak pernah?
Sure, Doctor.
No, don't be shy.
Not sure.
It's okay. It's okay. Don't worry. Maybe not. Maybe it's not included in your curriculum before this. Yeah, but it is an important concept actually. Yeah. So this concept was concept that came out from the work of Charles from Mills. Mills is his surname, Charles Wright Mills. In his work called the Sociological Imagination way back in 1959, where he described how one should approach the world if one wants to see and understand as a sociologist does. Yeah. So in other words, by having sociological imaginations, you can understand the world better. Yeah. Or certain event better and so on. Yeah. So Mills emphasizes the importance of seeing the connection between individuals and the everyday life, and also the forces, and the forces that constitute and course through society. Jadi dia melihat hubungan di antara individu dengan apa yang berlaku. In the everyday life, and also the forces that constitute and also influence those life ataupun changes in the life as well. So Mills emphasized the importance of also of understanding our contemporary lives and social structure in the historical context. So ada kaitan dengan apa yang saya bincangkan lebih awal tadilah tentang sociological previously, the sociological thinking sociologically, holistically. Okay, so right, so Mill's punya idea adalah dia kata by doing so, if we do sociological imagination, by doing so was an important part of coming to understand what we term as what we often perceive as the personal troubles, or in fact, which are in fact public issues. Maksudnya, apa yang kita lihat, kadang-kadang kita memikirkan masalah yang kita hadapi itu hanya kita punya masalah. We are the only one facing the problem. But actually, that personal problem is also a public problem as well, ataupun public issues. Cuma kita kalau kita tidak mengkaji, tidak melihat apa yang di luar sana, we may not be able to see things differently. So we thought it is unique to us. Well, actually it is not. Okay, so he described the sociological imagination as an awareness, as a vivid awareness of the relationship between one's personal experience and the wider society. In other words, what you experience personally and what is happening in the wider society is what is experienced by the wider society, in other words. Okay, so this kind of awareness promotes one, critical thinking, right? And also the identification of the forces ataupun sociological forces that affect social phenomenon ataupun yang menyebabkan sesuatu keadaan itu berlaku, satu social phenomena, and also the situations. So in other words, we will think critically, identify what are the factors or the forces that influence the social phenomena, dan menyebab satu itu berlaku. Contohnya kalau ada masalah. Masalah itu is something that is happening, but what contribute to that situation ataupun keadaan tersebut adalah sesuatu yang perlu dipikirkan. Okay, the three components that form the what you call the sociological imagination. First one is the history. History is the first component. History is how society came to be, how it is changing, and how history is being made. Indeed. Jadi, you know lah, sejarah ni adalah kita boleh melihat sesuatu masyarakat, bagaimana masyarakat boleh berada di situ, bagaimana ianya berubah, dan juga bagaimana sejarah, sejarah berkaitan dengan sesuatu masyarakat. The second component of the sociological imagination is biography. So besides history explains a lot, because if you want to know where you are now, you have to look at history. But besides that is the biography. In other words, this is the nature of society lah, more or less, nature of the human nature in society. In other words, what kinds of people living in or inhabit a particular society. That is the biography. Okay, so history itu adalah ianya ada kaitan dengan biografi. Nanti akannya history itu contohnya the people who inhabit that place also have their own history and so on. And the third one is the third component of the sociological imagination is the social structure. This is mostly referring to the institutions ataupun institutional orders in a society which in a society operate, which which institutions are more dominant and so on, yeah, and how are they being held together and how they might be changing as well. So struktur sosial yang ada di satu-satu tempat tersebut, ya. So, 3 perkara ini, the three components form the sociological imagination, history, biography, and the social structure, termasuk contohnya the leadership structure, the institutions in the society and so on. Okay, so a social institution consists of a group of people who have come together for a common purpose. Yeah, itu maksud social institution. So family is a basic social institution actually. Yeah. So besides that, we have other forms of social institutions in our society. So these institutions will be part or are part of the social order of a society, and they govern the behavior as well as the expectations of individual. Ya, institusi-institusi ini akan menentukan ya di social order apa yang boleh dilakukan, bagaimana, what are the acceptable behavior, what expected of each individual in the community, for example. Yeah, so there are social order. So what's the importance of sociological imagination? Okay, so having sociological imagination is important or critical for individual people as well as societies at large, ya, to understand. So penting ya untuk individu dan juga masyarakat. Okay, it's important as well that people are able to relate the situations in which they live, their daily life, to the local, national, and global societal issues that affect them. Jadi, in other words, when you look at certain things, yeah, you look at yourself, you look at the problems that you're facing, for example, you can relate that to the situation locally, yeah, di tempat kita, ataupun, and then you can relate it to the nation as well, national level, and also looking at it from the society, global level as well, yeah. So it is important that we understand things from a more bigger perspective rather than from your own perspective only. Ya, jadi perlu memikirkan gitu. Okay, so jadi itu this is something that sociologists should have, sociological imagination, di mana ini digunakan untuk membuat kajian, untuk mengkaji apa yang berlaku dalam sesuatu masyarakat, in societies, relationship between individuals and so on and so forth. So in other words, as a sociologist ataupun sebagai sebahagian dari ahli sosiologi, kita seharusnya dapat memikir ataupun to think outside of the box, thinking outside the box. Ini kamu pernah dengar kan? In other words, this is taking a wider perspective, not just looking at one angle saja, ya. So always question the status quo regularly. Maksudnya mungkin the status quo itu mungkin apa yang berlaku, ya, but we need to question why is that happening, why is that so, what makes things as such, contohnya, ya. Jadi question the status quo regularly, and also having creative thinking. Non-conformal itu maksudnya tidak semestinya apa nama itu memikirkan seperti orang lain, seperti yang dikatakan oleh orang lain, sebagai contoh, ya. Katakan orang kata ini bagus, ya, tetapi you have to maybe does not need to be disagree, but what you're looking is to think about it, to look at it from a different perspective, and maybe you will come or you will find certain things which may be different, yeah, from the perspective of other people. Maybe it's the same thing, but benda itu mungkin berlainan kalau dilihat dari segi perspektif yang berlainan maksudnya. Yeah. Okay, so just practice using this, thinking outside the box. Jangan ikut saja apa yang telah dibuat. Try something new. Think about something which has not been taught before, perhaps. Yeah, that's the way to go about in terms of sociological imagination. Okay. All right. All right. So next we go to the concept of sociological perspective. What is it? What it is? What does it mean? Yeah, in other words, sociological perspective adalah merupakan satu pendekatan. Yeah? It's an approach to understanding human behavior by placing within its broader social context. Itu the keyword is broader social context. Jangan terhad, ya. We try to look at things in a broader perspective, in other words. So Mills, in his writing, yeah, referred to this sociological perspective, sebagai satu pertemuan ataupun pertemuan intersection of biography, which is the individual, and history. Yeah, history here refers to the social factors that influence the individual. So it's an intersection between biography and the history. So that means that sociological perspective involve recognizing, yeah, and also evaluating the effects of social relationships and the social structures. Sebagai contoh, the various structures involved during development, for example, and considering the present day in historical context, so as to know why something became what it is today. Jadi, sometimes we take for granted for what we have now without even thinking about what happened in the past. Yeah. So that is what Mills was referring to. Yeah. Your history should be taken into considerations. Yeah. If to understand what's going on, in other words. Yeah. So it is the perspective, in other words, the sociological perspective di sini adalah merupakan satu perspektif that fosters ataupun that encourage critical thinking. Yeah, that's one. Number two, encourage you to pose critical questions. Ya, kadang-kadang kita ni kalau if you don't ask question, you don't know. Ya, so we don't just accept things as it is. We have to ask critical questions and also the pursuit of solutions untuk mencari penyelesaian. Ya, that's sesuatu masalah dan sebagainya. So basically that's what we're doing dalam research anyway, yeah, sociological research. We see a problem, we try to look at the problem from a different perspective, including history, and also some other forces as well. Ya, untuk mengenal pasti apakah faktor-faktor yang menyebabkan sesuatu perubahan dan sebagainya. Okay, so This perspective also frequently employed when attempting to apply certain set of ideas ataupun themes to the commonalities found in societies as well. The idea is to extract logical and also cohesive data ataupun information, unlike common sense, which takes no regard to how commonality came to being. Maksudnya, we have to look at facts. We have to collect data. We have to collect information, and then we can make some kind of conclusions. Yeah, which is not similar to common sense. Common sense is just without even thinking about the processes and all that. Okay, so this slowly led to the formulation of theoretical perspectives in sociology. So that's how theories come about, yeah, through the observations, through studies, data collections, and so on and so forth. Okay, if you want to know more about this, you can click on this. This is the some of the writings that let's see if I can. I don't know if you can see this. Ini kamu tak nampak kan? Betul eh? Can you see? Understanding sociological perspective. Tak nampak kan?
Tidak.
I know, but let me share. Yeah, well. Hold on. Ni apa ni? What's this? Okay, let me stop sharing that one. Share. Mana tadi? Oh, not this. Cancel. Slide. Yeah. Okay. Hold on. Okay, this is the one that I was talking to. The link tadi yang saya letak dekat slide tu ya. Understanding the sociological perspective. This is a good reading. I've taken some of the points from here. So you can, assuming that you have connection, internet and so on, you can find this. Right? So that is the one that I'm putting the link on. Yeah? Okay. So let's just close that. Okay, never mind. Let me move. Where are we now? Okay, so this was the last slide that I went through. Okay. So understanding social life. So to truly understand social life, we must move beyond common sense approaches. You know what common sense is? Jadi we must move beyond that. At least you as a student of social science, you should not depend on common sense. Yeah, you have been taught, you have learned how to do, to find information, to find knowledge, and so on. Yeah. Tapi ada juga lah common sense kadang-kadang betul, seperti apa yang apa yang based on facts and all that, but not all common sense are necessarily perfect. Yeah, so we learn what is really going on through what is known as the research ataupun sociological research. Okay, so the sociologists use 8 basic steps when conducting research. Basically, what you have done, by the way, you select a topic, you define the problem. Now, definition of problem is critical because if your problem is not well defined, you may have problem trying to find what you want to collect in terms of data and all that. Yeah, and review the literature, what the literature says about the issues and so on. Okay, and then you formulate a hypothesis and choose a research method to collect the data, right? Then you analyze the results, of course, ya. Jangan sampai collecting data tak buat apa-apa. You need to analyze the data and come up with your results, and of course, sharing the results. That's what sociologists are doing. Yeah, not just keeping it to themselves, but to share the knowledge again through the sociological research tadi untuk kepentingan masyarakat, untuk kepentingan awam dan sebagainya. Yeah. Okay, so to gather data, just quickly on this, sociologists use any or combination of the 7 research designs, termasuk survey, participant observation, case studies, secondary data analysis, analysis of documents, experiments. Experiments is the higher order lah. In social science, we seldom use experiments, but in behavioral science, they do. Yeah? And other unobtrusive measures. Unobtrusive measures itu maksudnya yang tidak mengganggu peserta ataupun di orang yang dikaji sebagai contoh. Ya. Okay, so that is something that's familiar to you. Okay. Now, next we'll be looking at the concept of development. Quickly look at this, but before that, I would like to take a break for 5 minutes so you can prepare your coffee, whatever drink you want to have. Ataupun ada yang nak makan Maggi mee pun boleh. I give you times, ya. 5 minutes break, ya, untuk kita sambung semula, ya. Boleh, ya?
Boleh, Doktor.
Okay. Boleh. Okay, kita berhenti sekejap. Okay, kita sambung balik. Alright, the concept of development, what does it mean? Yeah, one of the perspective on development is that it refers to the process of economic as well as social transformation. Ya, perubahan kepada ekonomi dan juga perubahan kepada sosial. Ya, and that is based on complex cultural and also environmental factors, yeah, and their interactions. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so example of this is this is just some example of development based on that definition tadi. Itu, for example, adding improvement to parcel of land is indeed a type of development, such as grading subdivisions, yeah, having drainage and irrigation system, access to the farm or to the land, roads and other utilities. Yeah, these are example of the transformation. Yeah. What other examples can you think of in terms of economic and social transformation. Let's say you on your own area. Ada kan? What about education? Right? Schools, universities, apa lagi, or hospitals, and all that. Yeah, those are form of social transformation as well. The concept of development. First, one of the important things about development is it is related to change. Yeah, the idea of change and progress. Ya, perubahan dan juga progress tu macam pembangunan lah, right? So what it implies is that there is increasing wealth, kekayaan, or better known as the economic growth, yeah, to the country, which is measured, usually measured in terms of the GDP, or the changes in the gross domestic product. So if there is an increase in the gross domestic product or GDP, so the country is considered mencapai tahap pembangunan. Okay, contohnya GDP increase from 50 million to 100 million, for example, gross domestic product, maka dikatakan tempat tersebut ataupun negara tersebut mempunyai pembangunan, measured in terms of economic growth. And then the idea of development also in relation to societies implies a process of change, yeah, change ataupun perubahan to what is in some sense to a more advanced state. Maksud di sini adalah kalau contohnya, ya, our communication system, yeah, in the country. So changing from what is, keadaan apa yang ada sekarang, kepada satu keadaan yang lebih baik, and that is a form of development. Okay, sebagai contoh kita di Sarawak, unfortunately, mana yang datang dari Semenanjung tu, you know what's happening in those places lah. Just last week I was in KL, and I've seen a lot of development as well, even in the area of Kuala Lumpur. New buildings, you know, highways and so on, macam-macam berlaku. That's the development that we're talking about. Yeah? So something that is in advanced state. So kita di Sarawak, we have only one road that we can use all the way to Miri or to Limbang, maybe not even all the way to Limbang. You have to pass through Brunei. But we want to have better communication facilities or infrastructure, perhaps comparable to what is already available in Semenanjung, Malaysia. And I was listening to the, I don't know if anyone is paying attention to the UMNO General Assembly today. The president of UMNO, Dato' Sri Ahmad Zahid Hamidi, mentioned about the need for them to look into MA63. MA63 adalah merupakan satu perjanjian, ya, dalam pembentukan negara Malaysia. So what he said, it's time to consider Sabah and Sarawak to be equal to the at least in terms of the conditions lah, to the other states in Semenanjung, Malaysia. Something new for those of you who are in Sarawak and Sabah. So development theories, therefore, are about understanding how this process takes place. Jadi teori pembangunan adalah melihat kepada bagaimana ya untuk memahami macam mana proses pembangunan tersebut berlaku. Alright, so some of the stories are looking into that. All right, but before that, how does development, the concept of development occurs? Sebelum itu tidak ada terfikir pun tentang the concept of development ataupun concept of pembangunan tadi. Ya, it started with the industrial revolutions. Yeah, that's when the concept of development emerged. Okay. All right, so let's look at history a little bit. So the Industrial Revolution, ya, satu revolusi perindustrian, was the transition to new manufacturing processes. Yeah, how things are being made or manufactured. It started in the period of 1760 to sometime between 1820 ataupun 1840. Yeah? So those are the period of the where industrial revolution started. So the transition, among others, included going from hand production methods to machine, ya, penggunaan mesin rather than menggunakan manual ataupun hand production. Penggunaan apa nama lagi, new chemical manufacturing and iron production processes. This is a big thing, ya, iron production processes, improving efficiency of water power, contohnya, increasing use of steam power, development of machines, and the rise of factory systems. Those are the impact, yeah, ataupun the processes that were involved in the industrial revolution. Okay, so the causes in effect industrial revolution. So of course you have the the factory or industry, yeah, that process the raw materials and convert it into a product, for example. Okay, so how things were made sebelum industrial revolution, contohnya in terms of the cottage industry, it's just use this spinning, ya, digunakan secara manual, ya. That is before the industrial revolution. Sebelum ada mesin yang dibuat untuk membuat kerajinan. Yeah? And then it all began slowly to change, yeah, from then on. Yeah? From slow moving manual work, then involving the use of machines and so on. Okay, also what causes the industrial revolution is the changes in agriculture, for example, yeah. The movement of enclosure movement and crop rotation, for example, improves people's health, and that create labor supply, yeah, and provided more materials to be manufactured. Jadi because people are more healthy, so there are more supply of labor, and that extra labor itu digunakan untuk selain daripada dalam bidang pertanian, digunakan dalam bidang manufacturing. Okay, so landowners and merchants had money to invest in business capital, right? And so some of the causes of industrial revolution. Great Britain. By the way, industrial revolution started in Great Britain. Yeah, they have abundant natural resources, termasuk coal, iron, and rivers too. Yeah, the water supply, and a large market for selling goods. Where are they selling goods? The market adalah ataupun pasaran mereka adalah the colonies, ya, negara-negara yang pernah dijajah oleh pihak British terdahulu, termasuk Malaysia, masuk India, masuk apalagi many other countries in Africa and so on. Yeah, those are the markets. Yeah, so they process the raw materials, the natural resources, and come up with products, and they're selling those products to the colonies, and we have to pay for it, of course. Yeah. So, so the start of the factory system, where goods were made by machines, yeah, in the industrial revolutions, and these machines did the work for so many people. Jadi tidak memerlukan ramai orang, machine replace apa nama human labor dan mempercepatkan the production of goods. Yeah? And also industrial revolution involved technology, the inventions of technology which change ataupun revolutionize the way goods were manufactured. Yeah, so they can now they can then produce goods on a mass production rather than little by little. Okay, so the inventions, among other things, spinning. I'll show you later on some this picture. Spinning jenny, spinning wheel, powered water-powered loom. This is basically dealing with cotton, yeah, ataupun fabric, cotton industry, cotton gin, steam engine, and electricity. Okay, so this is the, for example, this is the one they call spinning jenny. At least better than the one that was shown earlier on, manual. Then the spinning mule. This is the an improvement of that. Okay? So this can do the work much faster. And then water powered loom, ya, di mana ianya menggunakan kuasa air untuk melakukan kerja-kerja tersebut. Ya. Cotton gin, call it. This is a simple technology, but it works, ya, untuk I don't know, mungkin meleraikan ke cotton tersebut untuk menjadi benang dan sebagainya. And then the steam engine, ya, mula digunakan untuk apa nama itu, untuk generate electricity and power and so on. Okay, and then this is one of the biggest invention lah, the train using steam engine, and then later on using coal and so on. This is one of the inventions where it provide transportation, yeah, not only for human but also goods across the nations. Okay, this one is the water apa nama ni, menggunakan water powered cotton spinning mill, menggunakan kuasa air untuk memutarkan, ya, the what do you call that mill tadi, ya, spinning mill tadi. So the first to be powered by water, as well as the first successful industrial scale. Ya, ini katakan industrial scale, not just cottage, ya, in this industry, cotton production factory. It is called a Cromford Mill. So it has a lot of influence on the cotton industry as well as the industrial revolution ketika itu. So those are some things, yeah. So again, small thing, not a dam like what we have now. It's just using this water power untuk memutarkan ini. Dia hanya memudahkan. So without you to apa nama, untuk menggunakan tangan untuk memusingkan, ya, ataupun untuk memutarkan the roda tersebut, ya. Right, those are just examples of the impact of the industrial revolution. Yeah, so the spread of the industrial revolution ataupun industrialism, Britain initially attempted monopoly, whereby it controls industry ketika itu, di dunia lah ketika itu, started in Britain. Yeah. So skilled workers and inventors saw the opportunity to make more money as well. Okay. So ideas and plans apa nama itu, mula keluar ataupun leak out of Britain. right? So keluar daripada Britain. So this is how it spread to other areas. Yeah, started in Britain. The Industrial Revolution began here mainly because of the availability of natural resources, cheap labor, and we'll talk about cheap labor later on when we discuss on Marxist development theory. So Great Britain became industrial powerhouse in the 18th century and kept them in the lead for world power. So to Britain, although Britain tried to keep a monopoly of the industry, investors and innovators took their ideas outside of Britain where they sold their ideas for money. Jadi belum ada patent masa itu, ya, no patent. I don't know, it's a form of patent juga. Idea itu dijual ke negara lain. And then it goes to United States, yeah, in Massachusetts, yeah. Samuel Slater slipped out of Britain in 1799. Dia migrate to another. He took his knowledge of spinning to Rhode Island, US. Yeah. Okay. And then the factory system spread to New England. The North industrialized, the South relied on cotton sales to mills in North England and also the Great Britain. Yeah. Then the Germany as well. Germans bought British machine in the early 1800s. Jerman belum buat lagi, dia beli macam beli kereta lah. So they bought the machines daripada Germany in 1839. Germany used British capital or apa nama tu modal to build its first major railroad as well. So coal, iron, textile industries also emerged in the 1800s. By 1870, Germany, Great Britain, as well as the US were the three most industrialized nations. That's looking at history lah. Jadi itulah negara-negara yang mula-mula industrialized. Yeah. Okay, and then it spread to Japan. Yeah, the Meiji leaders, yeah, in Japan also pushed for industrialization. This is where Japan took more or less menggunakan teknologi daripada negara yang sudah industrialized nation, termasuk Germany, Great Britain dengan US tadi. Yeah. So ini Captain ataupun Commodore Matthew Perry arrived in 1853 with a fleet of steam-powered warships, exposing Japan to the power of industry. So by 1914, Japan was one of the world's leading industrial powers. That's how it spread to the east lah. Okay, so itu more or less a brief history of industrialization or how different countries of the world. Yeah. So it started in the West, in Britain, then to Germany, then to US, and then to Germany, and then later on to other countries in Europe and so on. Yeah? So what are the effects of industrialization? One is the growth of cities, right? Growth of cities, because most industries are located in cities, and people are and also urbanization as a result. The people are migrating from the rural areas to the urban areas to work in the industries. Another thing is the rise of capitalism, which is related to the private ownership of businesses and so on. Yeah? And then there are corporations as a way of organizing businesses. Yeah. As well, the rise of the working class and the birth of trade unions and so on, yeah, sampai ke the development of socialism, yeah, government-owned business. And by the way, this is the idea that Karl Marx has actually. His idea is for everybody to be more like equal, yeah. So, but but his idea is communism. But socialism is quite similar, but it is rather than individually owned, the business are owned by the government, and government has the responsibility to distribute the apa nama itu, keuntungan ataupun what do you call benefits, yeah, to the population of the country, right? This is just an example. And one of the things that happened during that time is the use of children to work in the industry. They're not even adults. Yeah, there are some advantages and disadvantages. In fact, now it is not even allowed. Tapi ketika itu dibenarkan. Yeah, it's easier for small person to walk in a space. A small space like that, yeah. Sama juga di tempat-tempat lain. This is basically in the cotton industry lah. And people are moving to the urban areas, so muncullah apa yang dikatakan sebagai congestion in the urban areas and so on, ya. Mula berlaku. Yeah, so these are some of the pictures related to industrializations in these countries. Okay, all right. So the last few things that we will look at today is the looking at the concept of development. Tadi kita mula-mula, tapi saya sedikit apa nama ni? Talk about industrial revolution, because that is the starting point actually, yeah, about the emergence of concept of development then. Okay, so what is the definitions, or what are the definitions of development? Sorry. Jadi so development is seen in different ways, yeah. Or has been defined differently by different people. Okay, so for almost every writer, a different definition of development exists. So it is important to first distinguish between, number one, where development is seen as a state ataupun a condition. In other words, this is where it is perceived as something that is static. Yeah? Static, tak bergerak lah maksudnya. Yeah? So I mean, people define development as something or a certain condition. Okay. The other way of looking at development is looking at it as a process. Yeah, sebagai satu proses or course of change. And from this perspective, we look at development as very dynamic. Yeah, it's a dynamic process. Okay, so all right, so that's the two ways of looking at development. And Michael P. Todaro, by the way, Michael P. Todaro is apa nama ni, economist, ataupun more specifically development economist. Beliau mengatakan, ya, development is not purely an economic phenomenon, but rather a multi-dimensional process. Ya, satu proses multi-dimensional that involve reorganization and reorientation of the entire economic as well as the social system. Jadi he is not just looking at how much wealth a country can generate, but rather looking at the other aspects of development as well. Ya, termasuk the social aspect, yeah, the human aspect of development as well. Okay, so development, according to Todaro, is a process of improving the quality of human life with three equally important aspects. Jadi tiga aspek penting dalam mengubah kualiti kehidupan manusia adalah pertama sekali to raise the people's living level ataupun living standard. Yeah, that's one of the goals of development. In other words, incomes and consumption levels of food, and medical services, education, and so on through relevant growth processes. Secondly, the second objective is to create conditions ataupun satu keadaan which is conducive to the growth of people's self-esteem. Yeah, self-esteem through the establishment of social, political, and economic system and institutions which promote human dignity and respect. Very important ideas, and not just so. The first one is about living standard, but the second one is about self-esteem. Yeah. The third objective of development, according to Michael P. Todaro, adalah to increase people's freedom. Yeah, freedom to choose what they want to do. In other words, the range of it should provide a range of choices. In other words, yeah, varieties of goods, varieties of services, different opportunities. Contohnya dari segi kerja yang ingin dilakukan dan sebagainya. So that is the people's freedom that he was talking about. So one, raise the living standard. Two, growth in the people's self-esteem, and the third one is the freedom to choose. Itu kalau kita tiga-tiga ni adalah penting, ya. So bukan saja wang ataupun pendapatan, tetapi the other aspect juga adalah penting. Okay. Yeah. Okay, that's the first perspective. The second one, sorry, these are alternate interpretation selain daripada apa yang kita telah lihat pertama sekali. So the other one is this is melihat development as an economic growth. Itu mengikut Mabo Genji, I think he's a Nigerian. Ya, apa dia kata tentang the interpretations of the development. Too often commodity output as opposed to people is emphasized. This is more critical. He criticized the definition of how people look at development. Too often commodity output as opposed to people is emphasized. Jadi emphasizing on commodity output rather than other aspects. Yeah? So this only measures the growth in the gross national product. So the persistence here, the persistence of dual economy exists, where the export sector contains a small number of workers, tetapi menggunakan teknologi as opposed to the traditional sector, where most people work and is dominated by inefficient technology ataupun the lack of use of technology. Jadi itu satu interpretasi yang telah dibuat, ya. Jadi interpretasinya adalah development itu hanya sebagai agent ataupun merupakan memfokuskan kepada pertumbuhan ekonomi saja. Keduanya adalah the second interpretation of development is development as seen as a form of modernization. Ya. Jadi ada satu bentuk modernisasi. So from this perspective, development emphasizes the process of social change, perubahan sosial, which is required to produce economic advancement, examines the changes in social, psychological, and political processes, and also how to develop wealth ataupun kekayaan, behavior, well-oriented behavior and values in individuals. Ya. Jadi memerlukan perubahan, maksudnya kepada individu tersebut dari segi nilai, ya. Perubahan nilai, and also profit seeking rather than subsistence and self-sufficiency. Jadi perubahan daripada hidup ataupun mengusahakan sesuatu pada tahap secara diri ataupun subsisten kepada something which is more to profit seeking, yeah, mendapat profit. So shifting from commodity to human approach. Instead of just focusing on commodity, it should focus on the human approach. Ya. Ini dari segi modernization lah, dengan investment in education and also training. Itu yang kedua. Ketiganya adalah development sebagai development seen as a distributive justice. Okay, apa yang maksudkan dengan ini ialah ini melihat pembangunan ataupun development as something as a way of improving the basic needs, yeah, of the people. So the interest in social justice, which has raised three important issues. Number one is the nature of goods and services provided by the government. So the government play a very important role di sini to provide the services, so goods, contohnya services in terms of electricity, water supply, jalan raya dan sebagainya, ya. Matter of access of this public good to different social classes, that is untuk memastikan bahawa different groups of people have access to the goods and also services. Also, issue yang ketiga adalah how burden of development can be shared among these different classes of people in the country, for example. So it's not just the top high class people, tetapi middle class and also lower class should be able to benefit from that. So this is about the distributive justice today, yeah, distributive justice. So it's interesting, yeah, beyond the economic perspective on development tadi. Tiga. So the target groups include small farmers, the landless, the urban underemployed, and the unemployed. Jadi itu yang difokus kepada distributive justice tadi lah. Marxist view of development pula. We will focus on this later on, ya. Later on, dalam kelas yang seterusnya nanti kita akan bincang tentang Marxist theory of economic development. But anyway, just briefly on this, Marxist from Karl Marx, by the way, ya. Ini para pengikut fahaman Karl Marx lah, ya. Marxist view of development emphasizes the mode of production. Mode of production atau macam mana sesuatu production itu dibuat, ya. Jadi untuk production pastinya ada not only the raw materials but also people who work, who produce the goods, yeah. So elements and activities which are necessary to produce and reproduce real or material life. Okay. Di dalam in the views of Marxist, the market economy ataupun capitalist mode depends on the wage ataupun gaji labor. Gaji pekerja whose labor power produces a surplus. Jadi mengikut Karl Marx, surplus ini ataupun yang lebih ini merupakan keuntungan lah sebenarnya, adalah disebabkan oleh gaji pekerja itu adalah not enough ataupun lebih rendah daripada sepatutnya. So wage labor whose labor power produces surplus which is accumulated and appropriated by the employer, resulting this often result in class conflict in the capitalist societies. Itu pandangan Marxis, ya. Beliau mengatakan bahawa akan sampai satu hari nanti the labor ni tadi akan merasa tidak puas hati dengan gaji, dengan keadaan kehidupan mereka, sedangkan the capitalists are accumulating a lot of wealth berdasarkan kepada surplus, ya. the production yang tinggi yang dibuat oleh para pekerja. So the more they produce, the more benefits to the capitalist. So mengikut teori Marxist, and he didn't even live long enough to see what beliau percaya akan berlaku, tapi tidak berlaku sebenarnya, adalah konflik between the capitalist, the industrialist, capitalist, and also di labor, ya. Jadi itu yang dia kata kelas konflik tadi. Anyway, kita akan melihat perkara tersebut kemudian. Ya. Okay, so those are some of the views lah, some of the perspective on development. What time is it? Almost 4 o'clock. Okay, give me maybe a few more. Ya. Kita ada sampai pukul 6 kan? Anyway, so but I won't take you all the way to 6 o'clock. So what is one of the issue now is people are talking about not just about development, but people are talking about sustainable development. And I think you must have heard about this. You must have come across this many times in your in your studies and your other courses, I think. So what is sustainable development, right? So this is more or less development, or can be defined as development that is likely to achieve long-lasting satisfaction of human needs and improvement of the quality of life, and it includes, help for the very poorest, ya, membantu mereka yang kurang yang miskin contohnya. Okay. These are people who depends on land and they don't have much choice but to destroy the environment in order to survive. Yeah. It also encompasses ataupun include idea of self-reliant development. Self-reliant, in other words, self-reliant itu maksudnya tidak bergantung kepada orang lain lah. With natural resource constraint and cost-effective development as well. And lalu satu daripada issue of sustainable development adalah it must be cost-effective using different economic criteria to the traditional methods. Yeah. And in other words, development should not degrade the environment. And other important issues of health control as well, appropriate technologies, food self-reliance, having access to clean water and shelter for all, right? And it is also people-centered activities necessary, in other words, that involve people. In other words, human beings are the resource in the concept di sini. Okay. As I said, I believe you must have seen this or heard this many times. Just let me share with you on this. Sekejap, saya cuba untuk aturkan browser. Okay. Not this one. What is it? You can browse the web and share the web pages living with the other attendees. Apply. Please type your. Oh, okay. Okay. All right. No. Let me get rid of this. Stop. Where was it? Kejap, saya cari.
Okay, Doktor.
All right, this is the one. Just 2 minutes of what is sustainable development goals, ya. Jadi SDG, ya, pernah dengar kan? So what is SDG? Sekejap, ya. Okay. Sustainable development goals, there are 17 altogether. Previously, it was called Millennium Development Goal, but now they have changed it to Sustainable Development Goals. And the period to achieve that, is 15 years. Jadi, setiap buah negara sebenarnya, in fact, whatever we do, even in our courses that we teach, we also include certain elements of the sustainable development goals in our course. Ya, sama ada in our offering ataupun macam mana kita mengendalikan kelas dan sebagainya. Okay, so itu more or less we will look at that issue of sustainable development again later on. Yeah. Okay, let's go back to our lecture. All right. Okay, but the issue is another issue is di kebanyakan negara yang miskin, ya, yang kurang membangun adalah isu underdevelopment rather than issue of development. Yeah? So, what causes underdevelopment? Mengapa sebuah negara yang kurang membangun kalau dibandingkan dengan negara-negara lain? There is not a single cause actually. Sebenarnya banyak, ya, idea ataupun teori yang telah dikemukakan trying to explain why there is lack of development or underdevelopment. Yeah. So firstly, it is quite easy for us to focus on the characteristics of development. Contohnya, we know that underdevelopment is usually characterized by low per capita incomes, low level of literacy, and educational attainment is low, lack of basic services, termasuk water, electricity, and so on, ya, termasuk jalan raya dan sebagainya. Those are characteristics of under development. But the important, but the apa nama, critical thing is how do we explain under development? Why certain countries are underdeveloped? Why they are not developing? In other words, ya. So adalah macam-macam teorinya yang telah dikemukakan, termasuk a view that the absence of development is caused by certain physical environments, ya. Particularly cultural tradition merupakan satu faktor. In other words, the culture itself, ya, the traditional culture itu menyumbang kepada under development. The value system, ya, sistem nilai yang ada di satu kawasan atau satu tempat juga menyumbang kepada under development. So this is the one of the views lah, yang menyebabkan kurangnya pembangunan berlaku di situ. Not much improvement, that's what I said. Not lack of changes and so on. The other view ataupun explanation for underdevelopment that is happening in these poor countries is the lack of natural resources. Ya. Kurangnya sumber asli. Tetapi if you look at Japan, Japan doesn't have much resources, but why it is one of the most developed countries in the world. Ya. Jadi kalau so why has Japan succeeded? Ada sebab-sebab tertentu. Walaupun mereka Japan tidak mempunyai sumber asli yang banyak seperti negara in the West, Britain and so on, but they are successful. The reason for that is they have nilai yang ada pada mereka, the culture and also the value system. Yeah, they have strong cooperation between government and business. That's one. They explain the success of Japan. Another one is they are able to adapt to the special physical situation, yeah, and acquire a maritime power or prowess. Yeah. Jadi mereka mempunyai that kind of power, maritime power. And also, I mentioned this earlier on, the Meiji system ataupun restoration, yeah, in the early development of transport and banking system, that needs to be there. Yeah? Transport and banking system has to be there in order to support, yeah, the process of development. Another factor also is in Japan they have a high rate of literacy. Yeah? High literacy rate. Is a highly literate population kalau dibandingkan dengan negara Asia yang lain. And the niche of development for Japan is technology. It's technology driven, right? So these are the factors. The factors which explain the Japanese success, yeah, to achieve the industrialization or high rate of industrialization and the development that they have achieved. So far, ya, highly developed country. Jadi ini melibatkan social, cultural factors as well. Ya. Okay, ada komponen, ada common explanations of underdevelopment. Ada juga yang cuba menjelaskan instability, ya, ataupun political instability and adverse internal situations, conflict dan sebagainya, ya. Boleh menyebabkan a country to be underdeveloped as well. Yeah, so infighting and so on. I think that you can see this, for example, in Afghanistan. a lot of people dengan what's the name of the group yang di Afghanistan who is take over from the US-led government dulu. Lupa pula. So that kind of thing also may cause underdevelopment as well. Contohnya, the extended periods of turbulence are not conducive to development. Contohnya, the Central African nations with tribal rivalries, ethnic cleansing, and so on and so forth. Tapi ada explanation juga why there are a lot of conflicts and tribal rivalries ini adalah disebabkan oleh sumber yang terhad. So people are fighting for, competing for the limited resources and so on. So because of that, they have little time to think about improving their economy and so on. So poor physical environment also is to some people, or at least some of the writers seems to think that contribute to the lack of development or underdevelopment. Lack of rainfall contohnya, kalau kita lihat di kawasan some part of Africa, where they do plant crop and so on, but if there is no rain, the crop will fail definitely. Poor soils in many parts of the third world countries, unfortunately, the soils are poor, not very fertile, and that explains the low production from the agriculture, for example. Okay. Okay, so what do we do with the development theory? I mean, I was supposed to discuss all these development theories, but I put it aside for the time being. Jadi teori yang untuk menerangkan pembangunan ataupun kurangnya pembangunan. So these theories have been advanced ataupun telah dikemukakan, have been criticized, and also some have also been discredited and to be replaced by other theories. Jadi mungkin satu teori itu kurang kurang mampu untuk menerangkan apa yang berlaku, maka timbul pula ataupun muncul pula satu teori lagi untuk cuba untuk menerangkan keadaan tersebut, using certain much later theory. So the third world, unfortunately, third world is negara, I hate to use this word third world, but that's what it is in the textbook and so on. The developing countries we're talking about, but the third, the people talk about third world. So the first world actually refers to the developed countries. The second world basically refers to the Soviet Union, yang sekarang ini Russia and all that lah. And the rest of the world belongs to the third world, termasuk negara-negara di Amerika, South America, and Africa, Asia, and so on. So the third world is heterogeneous. Kita tak boleh assume that all are the same. Definitely there are a lot of differences. It's very heterogeneous, and in other words, dissimilar in terms of its population, in terms of the resources available, in terms of the climates they have, in terms of the culture, budaya yang ada, struktur ekonomi, dan juga and other things lah. So there are a lot of differences. So it is very unlikely that one theory of development will be able to explain development or underdevelopment everywhere. Jadi tak akan sama. Jadi mungkin apa yang berlaku di South America may be different than what is happening in Asia and so on. Jadi kita tidak boleh mengatakan bahawa what is happening in South America also explain why the same condition also exists in Asian regions and so on. Yeah, so it's not likely that one theory will be able to explain all ataupun boleh digunakan untuk cuba untuk menerangkan keadaan yang berlaku di tempat lain. Itu maksudnya. Okay. So underdevelopment must be seen as product of an array of complex and continuously changing interactions, yeah, between one, past and present. Remember we talk about sociological imagination tadi, ya, kita perlu melihat kepada apa yang berlaku di masa lepas in history, and also what is happening now, the present. Keduanya adalah the interaction between nature and natural and human environments, as well as the external and internal conditions as well. Jadi perkara tersebut ya berinteraksi yang menyumbang kepada apa yang berlaku ataupun kekurangan pembangunan ataupun underdevelopment tadi. Okay, so this vary from place to place and also with time juga lah. Yeah, so the multitude of obstacles to development vary with place and time. Jadi tidak mungkin di satu tempat tu awal ataupun lambat ataupun mungkin dari segi what happened in different places are different, yeah, at the rate things are happening and so on. So it is critical to remember that the above theoretical ideas will help us in asking some important ataupun pertinent questions. All right. So that's the end of what I wanted to share. If any one of you have seen my earlier notes slide, which I posted earlier, I have changed that. I've taken out some of those because I thought some of those that I have included in there are supposed to be discussed in our later lecture or classes. So I've replaced it with this one, the latest slides that I put in there. Okay, so that is the more or less to introduce the basic concept of development and also the concept of sociological perspective, yeah? Development in terms of sociological perspective. Okay, any comments or questions? Are you still with me?
Yes, Doctor.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Any question, comments? You don't have to by heart or learn by heart, sorry, to memorize all this. After all, you're not going to have any exam anyway. But it's important to more or less to understand or grasp an understanding of what people are thinking about or saying about development and so on. Okay, but as we go along, I think you will understand better ya, apa yang dimaksudkan, dibincangkan ini. Okay, kalau tak ada soalan, saya itu sajalah untuk kali ini. We will meet again next week for our second lecture.
Doctor.
QR code,
Yes.
Doctor.
QR code, Doctor.
Sorry? I'm sorry. Are you asking me the same thing or Amirul? Tadi untuk apa?
Yes, QR code
Internet.
evidence.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay. No problem. Let me off the recorder. Stop. Oh, 1 jam lebih.